I'm here, just waiting to not hear the crickets. I'm trying to figure out what is our problem. I may have a little more insight as I listen very carefully to people, trying to figure out what is going on with us. Now, we do have the problem of apathy. We have the problem that we all know we shouldn't be up to deal with a lot of the stuff we do, the nonsense we do. And yet, we don't address those that come against that peaceful nature that we want to maintain. And it's not just about sitting idle and being peaceful and all that. I'm saying we have a peaceful society to have, and we should be wanting to work toward that. And apparently, a lot of people would rather just talk about it and not work about it and complain. And I've been bringing, I was going to say trying to bring, I have been bringing a methodology of understanding of the condition that we're in, the methodology of how you start to approach to look at that, the methodology of how you start to figure out what it is, and the couple of methodologies on what you're going to do once you figure that out. That if you're just talking about stuff and chatting about it or making comments that nothing works, you're not applying any of the methods. And maybe last week, a lot of you finally took heed to what I was saying. If you can't really apply what I'm saying, don't listen. Because last week I hardly got any listeners. For the whole week. Which is okay. That must mean where we are. That's where we're at. There's not a lot of people that really want to pay attention and get this stuff on how to do it. How to make it work. You don't really hear the nuggets that I provide. You don't want to actually do them eventually. You'd rather make the question. And this is just not going to work. Everyone said, well, we said vote local. Yeah, that's a powerful thing to vote local, but it requires that you get out to get those things to work that need to be in the direction. It requires that you find people in the local area. You got to go out and find these people that you could trust to be the guy or the gal that's going to be in a place that's going to fulfill that actual office the way it ought to be. And I say ought to be strictly by, at this point, let's just go back to the law everyone wants to deny because it's some corporate founding of corporate origination. Folks, there's a stuff before the corporation that has to be fulfilled. If you just read a little bit, even in your own constructed statutes, you'd see that. And this is the problem. Anybody who complains that their vote didn't do anything, and actually contrary to a vote, that the commissioners or the councilmen or the legislators or whoever is making the bureaucrats are making decisions counter to the will of the people, then you didn't sit back and listen to me when I told you there is a parallel invasion going on that's transparent to you. It's really not transparent. They tell you it's like hypnosis. They tell you this is transparent to you and you believe it. And I'm saying it takes work to go find the things that you need to know about this parallel construction that rules over your life, that makes your life miserable, that causes you to be in sufferance and suffering, that causes you to look in the world and say nothing's making sense no more. It's that parallel construction that you never set up against because you never listened behind the woodshed to the principles I'm saying to go find out about it before you took action. You just accept, I'm going to go vote and that's going to kill something. No, that's just one. This is a multi-dimensional war. And that multi-dimensional is the physical multi-dimensions through our senses dimensionally, through our the seven sins, if I can say it that way. That's all part of this. All of these things. And then it's also, we can go into what may be considered frequency dimensions, maybe altered dimensions. These other things that we may have little insights to that we really can't put our finger on actually, but we know we have an experience from it that really has no words. I'm talking about the physical reality. We're actually responding to a spiritual defeat if we're not careful, that you better have a good foundation for, because you will be one of those people that is susceptible to those seven sins we talk about that everyone wants to biblicize instead of actually use as I've told you. The protocols of the elders of Zion are those things that tell you that there's some people out there that know you better than yourself, And to me, that was a big, devastating observation, but I had to believe because I did not know a bunch about myself early on, and I still don't. I don't know a lot. I know a lot more. I know that there's someone out there that knows me better than myself that I didn't even know that. That became so devastating that have been working for decades now to overcome those deficiencies. And those observations and then engaging this thing that's against us, it's like, where did America go? Have brought me till today, to a point where, well, before today, but to a point where people who would engage with me and talk with me, my friends, say, you really got to get this out to people. You can't work. You're working yourself to death trying to work with everyone that has a problem. You have to start giving them the generality of how that they can work on the problem, and then it's workable in a way that does bring us back to the peace, contrary to the destruction and breach of the peace that the parallel construction has created for us. So voting is only a small part. If you voted on something here and it didn't go your way, well, that just meant that you didn't get out, but you thought your vote was only going to count. That was good enough. You're realizing there's a reality. If you did get it pushed through and then some other bureaucrat or a elected official in a bureaucrat condition and status that you didn't really understand because you didn't read your governmental organization and establishment papers to see that a lot of these counties, a lot of these local governments are actually agencies of state and not the representative form of the people sitting to protect them, then you missed it. And you didn't do your very first thing, was to go about and figure out what that meant in that charter and how to change that around and get these people back into tow, because they've constructed a parallel cage around you. And there is nothing you're going to do outside of that framework of constraint. Nothing. You can yak about it, you can complain about it, but you're not going to change it, and you're not going to make it go away. Now, how do I know this? How do you know this? I tell it to you all the time. If you just go listen and read what I'm talking about and then follow up. We talk about the roads. We talk about there's a motor vehicle code, and then I tell you there's a different law. It's called the road law. The motor vehicle code is a commerce-regulated activity, and the use of the roads are grants. And so when you have a transportation cause that comes into your locale, your metro area, your town, your county, and they want to redo through a transportation plan those things that that look stupid when you start looking at the realities, but no one looks close enough to even notice that they're stupid. Oh, like we're going to take a 2-lane highway and make it a 2-lane highway with margins, and we're going to make it a 1-lane highway. Transferring traffic back and forth so we can allow bikes. No one stopped. No one went in. They think their vote to stop it's more powerful than the parallel construction that's already approved it. How do I know that it can be stopped? Well, we've done our best to stop too, and to my best understanding, nothing has gone forward on 2 state transportation projects right now when the witnesses to the crime against the people stepped up and say, hey, that's a crime against the people. Your parallel construction's a felony against us. Guess what? That never gets to get voted on. That's defeated before it even gets running. And so if you're voting on something that you have people that are making decisions afterwards contrary to the vote, you are not understanding what I'm saying. There's a parallel construction that you have to go study for to find out how it exists. Then I'm suggesting to you already how you defeat it. You've never heard me say we defeat those things by going to vote, ever. I've said your local vote can be important. You can use the vote to actually get and impart your power as people by getting the power of the people invoked in the proper way. Always proper way. I have laid out the method on how you defeat all this nonsense parallel construction. Whether this is a fictional construction or not, whether this is the Genghis green in our doorstep, in our gates or not, there's a way to stop it. But you're not going to do it by putting a check mark on a ballot in this regard. You're not going to do it by just voicing an opinion. You physically have to get in the world and you have to stop the invasion. Now that statement is pretty much oxymoronic when you got looking at the breach of the peace, but then you aren't looking closely enough. There's civil ways to do this. Well, that was another breach. They made two jurisdictions by making a standard, and people don't understand, and I don't know if people can anymore. I really am wondering about y'all. Do you really understand what you're looking at when you read stuff? I see people making up all kinds of fairy tale issues, making the issue, this thing is so convoluted, it's easier just to make up something and be happy in that position. I've told you before, working through coordination, which is a public lands issue, for mandate upon the agencies of government, that the coordination is required, that gives you power. And since Jefferson Mining District and the things that I put together for the district on doing coordination with local governments and the federal government, I don't, except one that wasn't even in the locale. That's a whole different state. We just don't have coverage in that state. There has not been one administrative bureaucrat plan that's come out to hurt the people since we've engaged. And there's only a handful of us doing this. And you're not listening close enough if you keep telling me that, I've done this and done that, nothing worked. You don't listen to me when I tell you, then you didn't do the proper study. You didn't do your due diligence on what you were actually up against. And until you do, and you find an error with what I say, I don't know why you just don't default to what I'm suggesting in order to become effectual again. Again, in anything you find a wrong that needs to be made right. That's not my decision. That's up for you to decide. I'm saying no matter what you see that's wrong, particularly in the establishment of government and its effect in beating people down, there is a number of remedies to start doing that. I mentioned to you that we've developed in connections to the people that are in elected office. We come in an advisory capacity with law. That's all we speak. We don't have the luxury of being wrong once. We, by nature, build integrity. We build influence and trust. We build up, I couldn't do it. I found someone who could, makes himself available to a broadcaster. For 3 years, we're putting out law. We're putting out the concepts that people understood, that the people generally do not have they do not see this parallel construct that constrains every bit of their life. Now, after 3 years, they do. What did I just say? We've had someone working for 3 years. He couldn't do that behind a keyboard only. He spends a ton of time researching. After I guide him into where to research, to focus his research, like I tell you, give me a chance to get you to the trail on what the wrong you want to make right, and then I'll give you the place that you can travel. He does that. I've never had to ask him twice. He then took what he knew and made an inroad to broadcaster. He now tells that to the people that will listen. This is what it takes. There was also the vote. I told you we did well as far as what we're looking at, people putting people into places to get the job done that the people need. We did well. Where is it going to go? We don't know, but we are much better positioned right now than we were when we didn't put the effort in. What'd that take? It took almost a year and a half finding the right people and then helping them to understand what they needed to know while they were attempting to gain the office. We didn't do it behind a keyboard solely. And so, there's a lot going on that's not been going on. I hear lots of complaints. It's like, throw your hands up. We found the first failure and we throw our hands up. And I'm telling you that's just you. That's your failure. Not the system. The system has many things that are available to us if we would just engage it. And right now the problem is we have so many fires to put out, it looks like it's almost insurmountable. And I have to agree that that's pretty defeating, but you can't look at it that way. I don't think the time I put out a field fire all by myself, it was 2.5 acres, half of which it was almost a diagonal line of an arc that was going through 2.5 acres of grass. And it was heading for my property, which we had just downed a bunch of trees earlier, and there was the firewood was still dried up and laid up by it was the end of the summer. And I don't know, looking at that 2.5 acre line, that I knew at the time I could put that fire out before it reached my property. But I literally grabbed a weed whacker and a shovel, and I started in. And I'd whack and I'd snuff, and I'd whack and I'd snuff with the shovel, and I'd whack the grass right before that fire line, and I'd snuff the fire right behind that fire line. In other words, what are you doing? Taking away the fuel and then taking away the oxygen. And I whacked and I snuffed the entire line by myself, just whacking and snuffing. Why? Because I'm looking at a greater harm coming. My whole property would have went up if that fire would have went into that tinder that we hadn't got quite cleared out yet. And do you know I had that fire line whacked and snuffed and smoldering before the rural fire department came? What I didn't do is get the fire that had gone toward the garage, and when they showed up, it lit the garage on fire, and you know the whole fire truck and crew, the whole crew lost that garage to fire because they didn't put it out. So sometimes you can have a whole organization and all the equipment to do it, and if you don't have the knowledge and proper application, you're going to lose that battle to start with. I just want you to know I didn't jump into that fight against that fire with a thought that I was going to lose. I had no thought but to put it out. And this is the fight that we're in. It doesn't look like it. So in a way, I have multiple emotions if I have any. Part of it's I'm annoyed, I'm dismayed, I'm disappointed, I'm just befuddled. All of these adjectives that come along. To perceive what I see in the world as a bunch of people that are just ineffectual. They can't even help themselves out. They lost in a couple of ways pretty badly, and they said that was it. And so they relegate themselves to things that are ineffectual because it's safe. And yet I'm telling you there's a way to get out there and you're still safe. And unlike Cracker in the UCY chat that has a camera on him 24/7 in his living room, now he feels secure. Tongue in cheek, don't get all upset. I thought that was a funny joke. This is something that you have to get out, and you don't need that camera to be secure. You can actually get out and do something. And you could do it without jeopardizing yourself. That's what I keep telling you. You find the way that doesn't jeopardize you, and you get right into the thick of it. And that law you bring is your shield at some point. The law that isn't being recognized anywhere will be recognized when you assert it. Because when it's in anywhere, no one recognizes. It only gets asserted where it is. And it takes people to do that for themselves. And one thing I would just move on, I was remiss to discuss in this election thing and the thing that we could talk about all our civil nature, all these things that we've had to done to try and keep peace amongst ourselves, because we're really we reduce to ourselves to that human animal they treat us as, and we tend to reduce ourselves to. We need these rules. I guess that's falling back to those protocols, isn't it? There's people out there that know your baser nature is better than you, and they use that against you, and you haven't figured out you have that baser nature, and it has to be put into check all the time. That we have a natural thing that can be happening. Don't ever pretend. Don't ever believe I've not been rooting for our main candidate. Remember that electors haven't cast their vote, and that little provision I was telling you about that may be a question is now coming more and more into focus today about this the electors and maybe swinging their votes, which I think it's going to be kind of difficult, but it's always an opportunity until the certifications happen. Don't forget, there's still something that could care less about the giant. This is the giant meteor, the giant meteor 2016. I notice now on Twitter the giant meteor is now going to 2020. So. Giant meteor is a contender here into the future, and so we should not lose the sight of our condition in this environment. We have this called what they were calling earlier spaceship Earth, and those that want to rule it for you and by you, not by you, but instead of you. At any time, giant meteor can come and take all this out. This is the Hail Mary for a lot of us that don't see that any of us are going to make it work out, because the caucusocracy is stronger than we are. the excrement that has risen to the top of our civil nature, inverts the whole thing, and somehow we can't clean the swamp. So we put someone in office that claims they are, and the first thing you watch them do is deepen the swamp. What did I call it? I've called it the stinking abyss, folks. How long have I been using this term? And we slip into it. I always find it fascinating. I didn't want to call out a lot of it. He called it this drain the swamp. I know what it means. We know what it means. He's going to drain the swamp as if that's going to help us. I looked at it also in my view and said, no, he's just going to deepen the abyss. He's going to put more into it. And yet, what did I say? I said, despite that, because of what that is, and because of the natural dynamic, I'm not talking nature, I'm talking natural dynamic in people and things and the reality of what's going on, we are looking for a crack in the porcelain to actually fulfill a small thing that was promised. And because of the promise, we might actually get it done. What myself and colleagues have been focused on for 10 years in particular. What my question about where did America go is partly answered by this. It went by the parallel construction that defeated us in our property disposal, property rights, and property remedies. And they've done it by all the ways I've explained prior. That's the battlefield you're in, and you're going to have to figure out how to traverse that without doing the traverse. In legal, see, there's a traverse over land and there's a traverse in legal. You don't want to do the traverse in legal unless you can get away with it. The government does that really well, so that's why I say you have to bring them back. No, you spoke about something that is not relevant to the point, and therefore you didn't answer and you failed. Now you now are subject to the burden of that failure. No, you don't go off and talk about the birds and the trees when you're pushing your point. To do so, to talk about the birds and the trees on the suggestion of the other party is a traverse. And when they get you off, I've told you this before, when they traverse and they get you off the narrow path you're supposed to be on, they get you in the deep dark forest of legalism, they beat you up and leave you there. Same thing as scientism and science pocus and all these things. But the giant meteor reminded me of something when this little new ditty came up. The scientism is trying to, the earthism, the green religionists, the gang green is trying to deny the existence of how we got here, or give the idea and try to give an answer on how. And we've come up with all these fairy tales as well, which are out there. This little story came very, very interesting, but it touches on something for myself that really has been unanswered, is not answered by this story, that scientists drilled into the crater left by the dinosaur-killing asteroid. So we got the giant meteor coming, and this is what could happen. But then this comes up right after the election, and I'm saying, well, that's a sentence. You know, I'd kind of go off the titles as well. I can see a lot in just the titles. Would scientists actually have the hypothesis that this asteroid was dinosaur killing, unless they had the proof? Or that the crater was left by an asteroid, first of all, or that it had that kind of force and effect? Tells me that maybe there's a whole lot of hyping going on right away. A team of scientists found out a lot more about what could have transpired when an asteroid smashed into Earth 66 million years ago by drilling into a massive half-underwater Chicxulub crater located in Mexico. Essentially it's the Yucatan, the cup in the upper western side of the Yucatan Peninsula. Now, that first sentence, it says, what could have transpired? Well, to say it was dinosaur killing would have to have meant they already knew that. They would also have to know that that asteroid smashing there did that 66 million years ago and was the cause. But see, all this is all based on fairy tales. Well, my point is, I want to get a better understanding, despite these people. I want to get a better understanding because, you know, this creation is pretty awesome. We're infantile to the whole matter. But they're going to go drilling into this massive half underwater crater. Well, okay. They called it a crater. How'd they know that? Well, based on some theories. But this touches on, and I found this in the pictures, exactly problematic. And I guess I could go much deeper into some of this, but at some point I don't see much use in it. You are just as probably quicker to read some of these things, I'm sure, than sometimes I can on the broadcast. But I'll give you a link, but we'll talk a little bit here. Just coming from the pictures. The very first picture they show is this meteor coming into the Earth at least, well, it's a spinning sphere already, and they show a sphere coming into the Earth, and they show it coming in at a slight angle. And I wanted you to, as I verbally say this, I want you to take note that they don't show the ejecta coming from this collision that the big, certainly looks a lot bigger than the one they'd find at Yucatan coming in near the poles of the Earth. The ejecta is not, it's spraying out in one direction, as you would think, and you've probably seen something coming at an angle, impacting, let's say, sand at an angle. You see that it spews stuff out in one general direction. If you look very carefully, they have this thing coming at an angle, and it is spewing a bit. All the oceans of the north and the land are being blasted out into a pattern that they depict by some artists as being generally starting to go in one direction more than others. In other words, it's not a round circle. That you go to look at the second picture that they claim came from a meteor, and you look around and you see all these meteor cavities are fairly circular. And my mind starts to say, well, they depicted this coming in at an angle and the Earth spinning. So we got all these dynamics going on that are not a straight-on bullet shot, if you will. That any ejecta could not be circular in form. That the second picture of the place that is drawn up about this to show you what they conceive is the impact crater from this asteroid that killed dinosaurs 66 million years ago has two concentric, perfectly round circles, essentially. There's another drawing you look above, and the little northern part is actually caved in a bit. It's got a dimple, if you will, in the round circle, but there is no proof of any ejecta in any angle. These are relatively perfectly circled with a defect in one picture, the outer ring at the top. Now, given that the Earth's moving at 1,000 miles an hour at the surface, I suppose, if we can get our best guesstimate, and given this, the asteroid more than likely could not come in as a bullet shot straight into the core. The picture that they depict and the finding on the ground cannot depict an asteroid strike, first of all. And this has been my problem with the moon. Even the lander that came in to land that they just had land, put a spew all over the top of the ground you saw. You can see evidence of what happens when a meteor comes in, even only a few hundred miles an hour, a few 1,000 miles an hour, whatever the heck it was, because they miscalculated where to drop the parachute. It put a fan spew all over. In fact, ejecta came out sideways. They haven't figured out what that is. We have evidence what happens on an impact. This is when they tried to land on the place. How exact are all of these things have to be in order for them not to put a concentric, or some elongated ejecta pattern? Is astonishing to me. That they all are perfect, almost perfect. Now, the pictures alone start to mitigate against their theory and start showing the scientism that they're trying to promote. That there were dinosaurs, that there was evolution. There might have been dinosaurs, but the evolution, that the giant meteor's great grandfather came and impacted the world at that spot and created these concentric rings. And now they're going to prove it by drilling in, instead of drilling in and finding out that it makes those proofs or other things. That I'm going to suggest to you that here is more fake science. As we want to move into the fakeness, I keep telling you it was coming. Here it is. There's nothing you look around. It's not going to be. No one knows how to untangle, to straighten this one up. They're gonna normalize fakery. Why? Because there's nothing reality. This is where they're taking all of this. But looking at the reality of on the ground, at the two relatively perfect concentric circles, tells me it wasn't a meteor or an asteroid to begin with. I said asteroid is bigger, not a meteor. So I want you to start, I guess it's an exercise in thinking for yourself. There's no proof here. They say up front on top of this article, it could prove, or could show, or could have transpired. If you look at the discussion throughout this document, they go through more and more of these questionable statements about what could and may not have happened and what might have been done. But you have to let's go back to the title. They claim they know. So we already have this conundrum built into this whole condition that I want to open your mind a little bit more. And I want and maybe to expose something, and this is conjecture on my part, but fits the model a little bit better. And I just want you to go anywhere. If you haven't seen one, go to the internet and find a video of a bubbling mud pool. Any place with very thick mud that is giving geothermal action or gases, volcanic gases, coming up through a thick mud pool. And I want you to watch that for a while. Look at a few of them. And I want you to think about whether or not that looks more consistent with what they're showing you happened in the Yucatan, or by any other asteroid or meteor impact. And if it does, think about what might be the actual thing they're looking at there. And go read this story and think and apply what I'm telling you might be a more proper way to analyze what happened in these so-called asteroid impact zones than what they are trying to do by the same words that they use. In other words, you'll notice they talk about the deep coming up, many hundreds of meters deep coming up to the surface and being found in the middle. And if you think of a gaseous plastic material with pressure coming from inside the earth, whatever material it is, gas or moisture, and it bubbles up into this round, perfectly circled bubble, and then inside of that there's another one that comes up, and they're plastic enough they leave their shape, that you're looking at this. This is the rocks. The rocks are not solid, not in this dynamic. That they talk about heat, and they talk about formation, they talk about upwelling from the deep. Wouldn't that all apply in this case? That you're looking at the earth essentially in that spot for a while was this big geothermal, volcanically driven mud pit. Better than the asteroid theory. And if that's something that's possible, or equally so, then that kind of blows away the dinosaur killing theory, doesn't it? At least for that, unless you can say that the mud bubble that was formed had so much gas that, like we hear it happens in Africa, whole villages die in moments because carbon monoxide comes out, that maybe it came up over and went across the waters and killed off a whole lot of animals because they just ran out of oxygen. The oxygen got displaced. Did you know carbon monoxide is flammable? Maybe there's a condition that can also, together with, remember the Gulf of Mexico is very deep, it has solidified methane. If that comes up together, don't we have a potential ignition problem? Like lightning in an area that's always got Florida's known in the United States to be the most lightning prone place in the United States. I want you to expand your thought on what you think science is telling you and try to find different analyses. This is probably the one I feel is more, this mud theory, this mud bulbing, mud pits theory seems a lot more plausible to me. I'm saying plausible. We don't know. And then if I extend that over to the moon, that seems a lot more plausible. You say, but there's no water on the moon. Well, there's nothing that's like oceans. What if there was just enough to float all the rock that makes up the moon in a soup, a fluidized soup, that the liquid on the moon, because of the lack of pressure, started to off gas, and what you're looking at there is not volcanic, more than vacuum off-gassing does exactly the same response to a plasticine soil, if I can put it that way, sediment. My problem with these stories is that they get us confined. They are an implied authorita that gets authority, that drives all the things that you're talking about that control your life through these same style snake oil salesmen. And if we don't, again, have, as I'm finding out, it works for us, if we don't have the alternative available. They talk about alternatives. We have to have a reality that's the alternative, because they're imposing a non-reality as the alternative that they can rule you by if you don't speak up, and speak up in the proper way. This is my Dakota access problem. If you have a cause, speak up in the proper way. Don't act out and then blame and then claim yourself something that you're not. But let me get back to the asteroid. You'll give their power over to other people to determine the reality by which they rule you. If I can come up with an alternative, then all of a sudden it's not so certain that they have authority, they have insight to have an authority to rule me by, or make that standard by their rule. It's probably as important as me telling you what I think's gone on here. The surface, the so-called crust, I think might be, the crust of the earth might be another deception somewhat. Yeah, rock is hard, but you know it got there by being plastic. And you know the ground is solid until some vibration like earthquake comes to make it, to fluidize it. Again, the power of the universe is really almost, I think, really beyond us at some. We can see the evidence of it, but we want to deny it. We don't know how the rocks were made. We don't know the rocks like in, what is it? I think I've been through there. I never stopped. Again, doing fast travels across country, you kind of get lost in what you're doing and not seeing the sights. Sometimes that's not so good. But I think it was in New Mexico, and you have those rocks that stand up with a square top, and they're real thin. There's no proof that those were there and then eroded away. Those are the last of an erosion of a plate. There's no evidence that that's not created by electrical deposition in a world that was so much more dynamic than we can conceive and comprehend. To say that that's not a built-up slag, that you look at it very carefully and it looks like it does look like it was made like that. To be a possibility, if I wasn't there. If you don't have these things and thoughts in your mind, you will be easily persuaded to someone that claims a better authority. Remember what the church did to people, and then what they did to Galileo. And what I call Galileo 2.0 today is the green religion doing the same thing to us, utilizing these so-called scientific theories that are always a question. And I don't mean the scientific question, because even a good scientist will tell you, well, this is only what they witness they can reproduce, and they're certain to that extent. But they're not 100% going to tell you that's reality either. And this is the interesting conundrum that actual scientists will tell you that most people will take as a weakness. They have, in a way, they have to talk in a non-certain way. But that's not what's happening here. They've gotten so many things they believed as a theory that's been proven enough to rely on. They've never stopped to say, wait a minute, none of this may be actually true. We're just kind of moving along on it. That a scientist on his particular study will tell you that's the case. We've studied this really well. We truly believe this is what this evidence proves. But you know, we can't to an absolute certainty tell you that, because we just don't know what we don't know. We don't know a dynamic that we didn't know existed. We don't know what we have never witnessed. So if we've never seen lightning bolts coming out of the sky to build mountains, we wouldn't know that they're made from a slag material, that they're aggregates that have been fused together. You understand how much power in compression is in a lightning bolt, folks? Do you understand the power in that, in a void? And what's that formed by but the plasma contracting the space and the atom, the structure of our reality. this is just, I mean, like I said, to me, maybe it's just me. It's somehow almost beyond my ability to understand it. I can talk about it, but I don't know if I fully kind of comprehend it all. That we can be lulled into these scientism, or we can step back and say, wait a minute, they're getting us down this track. Because if they get us into evolution, they get us into being a monkey, they get us into being an animal, and then all of a sudden we are all monkeys in a third world banana republic getting our EBT card, like is coming from Venezuela. And I mean, at some point, I'd so much rather talk about this stuff, this natural wonderful stuff, natural wonder thing. Like I sent in last night on the RLM chat, the Jet Man has a new video, a relatively new video out, and they got 3 guys now with jet wings on their backs. 3 guys flying with regular jet airplanes. I said, that's a whole much better, more exciting to me to do in life. Something I would have been directing myself toward had I not been focused on this other nonsense. We have a much better, more fulfilling life to live. You might say, what does that mean? You know, who cares flying around? Well, okay, that's maybe not your interest. Just watching it was just, to me, wow, what do you say? Wow. Men flying with wings and jet engines on their body. Their body is flying. How long has man wanted to do that? And so we make all these contraptions to do so. If you don't want to fly, that's fine. You make one of those types of people that are probably pretty safe on the ground. Somehow those of us that would like to do that survived enough. I don't know, even in all our experimenting. Just make sure that you stay within the Icarus condition and don't go there. So we have a wonderful thing we can do in this world that we can be focused on. Some people are doing it. I certainly haven't been able to, but these types of stories show me the dichotomy between making stuff up and what might be really happening. And if we don't understand what really happened, then we're going to make wrong, not so good decisions. I can't say wrong decisions. We're going to be making decisions that might not be as good as we need to. And when I apply that theory to what we're doing, what I try and talk to you about being behind a woodshed, about what this means, what I'm trying to do, what I'm trying to get us to do, how I'm trying to get us to do it. And we have to kind of monkey wrench this system that's gone out of control by parallel construction until we get it back to a more proper place. And so we can only then keep only one eye on it, not our whole intention and our spirit all over it. We can keep one eye on it, make sure it's working, then we can go back and do the other stuff. The laws of this country, when you look at them in the proper sense, not how they've been parallelly, can I even say that? I didn't, did I? Constructed, then maybe we can start doing a better thing. Maybe we can start seeing a better way. So we have a lot of things that we could be working on, but we have to put that in practice. Otherwise, these people with a plan, they're going faster with the plan than those of us that don't have one. Even though I'm trying to tell you that we do have a plan, and it doesn't take many, just stepping forward, learning what their condition is. You have to learn, like this, going back to the transportation rules. When they come in with a transportation mode suggestion, you have to understand the process I've been telling you is a felony. You have to be able to know how to say that. You need to be able to go to their documents. You need to research what the state's done, who the stakeholders were, how they pulled it all together, what the failures were. Even I only find the top 5 or whatever. It depends on how strict they were in making, or how hard they are making it look like it's right. Will depend on how many actual things you have to dig up to show how wrong it went. A lot of times you only need 3. I try to go 10. I want to make sure I have a lot of background. I want a lot of ammunition. I want to know the subject matter well. You learn how that process works to get a transportation policy in your land to overcome your right to the highway and the construction of the road that was happening underneath the grants. If you understand that relationship and you understand they can't take a transportation plan and put it on those rights, that they, by doing so, they're agreeing that it's distinct from what you have right to do as the people, now you're starting to grain the foundation to make the distinction that the Bar Association and the government won't allow to you, that no one understands until I have told you, and you go research it and find out for yourself, and then you impose it upon these felons who are actually committing high treason. because they're coming contrary to the laws of the United States. I said it's a parallel construction. If that construction interferes with the laws of the United States, lawful laws of the United States, because there's a lot of laws that are not lawful. There's a lot of laws they'll claim is legally lawful, but they're not lawfully lawful. And when you identify the lawfully lawful ones and apply those back, if they transgress those, that's what's called treason against the laws of the United States. And so until you figure out how this works and you can identify the battlefield and the collateral, the parallel construction, you're not going to understand why certain things happen that says the so-called will of the people spoken, and then all of a sudden now you don't see it happening, and so you wipe that's it. They never go the right way. What you're looking at is a crime that needs to be arrested. That means you need to roll your sleeves up even further because you missed it, first of all. Secondly, they have to be arrested. And how are you going to go about doing that? If you missed it before the first time, you aren't even in the position to go do it. So you have to sit back and say, what did I just witness? How was that not right? And that's the wrong I want to make right. And I'm suggesting to you, as I do all the time, that you have to go read the black and white. You have to find the source. We've been able to unravel how the state does this to us, how the federal government does this, how the courts do this, how the political parties do this. I've essentially given you the roadmap if you would actually listen to what I'm saying. I mean, actually hear, listen, pick out those things that are applicable. You're not going to do it by not reading. You're not going to do it by thinking you know. You're not going to be doing it by just tossing it to the winds. And so let me offer, and then going back to now the North Dakota, in this concepting of how you go about doing things better, at least, more proper, I want to give an offer of another help if it will be accepted. Again, no guarantees because of how the situation has been made. Because of what the people did wrong in getting the point to this point and almost out of hand. This is going to be a difficult one, but I think one that's possible given that the proper application is put immediately or really soon. At the no DAPL thing. You know, I said I'm washing myself, my hands clean of that, like I'm Puncture's pilot. No, they've done it a ton wrong. People are getting hurt for no good reason in my mind. I've been claimed to not understand the deeper meaning of everything. That's fine. You can take that opinion. I've said there's a method to get what you want if it's genuine. And that if you're pushing a bad position and you're calling it something else, you're going to see harm. You're going to see harm anyway at some point until we get this thing straightened up. But you're going to see some real harm and have no real justification. And I see so many people continuing the meme that corporations are bad, that police are bad. I'm saying that they're any good. I'm saying that's a wholesale excuse so that we get to do what we want instead of to do what would be more proper. That, somehow, I don't remember, I think it was an email that came on a totally different issue, showing me a video of a guy named John Bolenbaugh, who is documenting the harm that these pipelines with their current construction and rules and standards are causing. That I want to bring a little more to the plate, because apparently people don't believe me. They don't understand there's a more proper way to do this that actually moves this thing along. Instead of snubbing your nose at the process, saying, "Oh, we're sovereign, we get away from me, we're sovereign," you had to engage what you were given, even under the treaties, by the way it's said. And let me say quickly on the treaties. Treaties can be knocked out pretty easily if you go read about them. So let's stop holding everything so dang sacred and start working about reality. That you're only going to work within the reality that those that have the power to affect you will rule. And the only thing I've been able to see is you have to do that within their rule set, within their officialness, whether or not it's authorita. It is the conquestor power. It's the occupying power, and you have to speak to that. And it's the honor among thieves and plunderers, that when they make the rules, they will follow them, and when they don't follow them, they can be called to account for it. that I've been saying that's what you have to do. John Bolenbaugh, and I apologize. There was 3 videos. I went to 3 and I said that's enough. I don't need to see any more. He's now actually asking for money to make a documentary about what he's found. And I looked at it and said, I don't want to. If you don't want to send money to him, fine, take it and make a documentary. I'm saying process-wise, he has all the record y'all need to cause a major question on whether or not DAPL's been done correctly. It has nothing to do, actually, with the so-called sacred rights in the water protector. But because it is so instrumental to the protection of water, it would properly protect water within the practicability problem that is only given to us by a society of a bunch of people all wanting to do what they want to do. That the videos I saw gave 3 things that you could bring forward right now in order to cause a question enough and or regulation in the future enough that Vince, on his broadcast exposed to us, was something that they don't do when he said the landowners don't have a standard they put in their contracts for maintenance, first of all, or construction. Secondly, which I think I'm adding there, but the point was, Vince gave us one little tidbit of insight, if you all were listening, on how you address what I've been telling you through these other DAPL broadcasts on this subject matter, needed to be brought forward more than, hey, we're sovereign, you go we'll look at the hand. And then when you run into the process, you don't actually prove, and it's unprovable what you're claiming. Notwithstanding your cause, notwithstanding that we all need water, notwithstanding that it should be as nice and clean as possible, notwithstanding that if we treat our environment better, we are better. Don't convolute what I'm saying to continue to say essentially to everybody, la, 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 with that guy. We're doing this. John Bolenbaugh has in his videos 3 points which would, and then looked at through Vince's contribution, that there are no maintenance contracts or there is no actual standards that can show cause a problem. In his videos are 3 things you can use to stop this thing if they'll recognize it. And right now it's not even put in the record, so they can't even recognize it. And this is the fact of what the harm does, what the construction companies are willing to do. Now, they can't extend that, what this company does, to others, but you can show that if you can show other cases now, you can add a 4th element, that most all others do exactly what you're saying that they're doing, and we do have problems, that you, as I told you before, can offer to the process. That the standard that they've allowed to be permitted does not allow for certain things which causes, the absence of which causes harm in the future, which cannot be paid for by bonds or whatever. Whatever. I mean, there's more words to use. I'd have to go back into all that. What the main thought is in John Bolenbaugh's witness through his camera. The harm that he shows is happening, whether or not they'll agree to the causation. You show it wasn't happening before, you just put it on the table. That the mere breakage of the pipes causes these things that they will cover up and the government will protect, can be placed on the table, that must be complied with as a burden for them to show that by not doing it, it is that they've done everything. It's in the standards that they've done everything that they could to mitigate it, which he has one comment that it didn't prove it, but I would agree with him on the value. He would need to prove this out for sure. That he made a comment is one of the points, that it costs these companies $1 billion or so. And I think it's maybe a rough estimate. And I really don't know how accurate that was. And I don't know how emotionally charged the comment was. But if there is that kind of harm that costs the companies for a breakage there, that can be put into the cost of the standard to keep it. In the construction and maintenance, the costs that could be put on the table that must be rendered up front before they can agree to have that pipeline put in. In other words, if it's going to cost them, when you're witnessing that they're actually violating causing harm to the environment, it's going to cost them that $1 billion. It's reasonable to say, well, it's going to cost you that over the average anyway. Why don't you put that into the construction quality and inspection up front? That I don't know what the cost actually would be. It seemed to me that some of them were in the billions, but not necessarily that much higher, that an increased construction method, maybe a dual pipe system, which would look on the surface to be problematic and expensive, when weighed against what they do as a historic, evidentiary, provable harm for any small break, applied to the mitigation up front, could be what you're looking at. And then we have what we might consider to be more of a win-win situation without people going out to the field and getting water cannoned by sub-zero water, getting their arm blowed up by some percussion device. And I say flash bang, I think, is a percussion. Concussion would actually kill you if I understand the military use of grenades. But at any rate, doesn't matter. Get your arm blowed off because you think you're doing something right. On a land that I understand, again, is permitted, and that permit's going away on December 5th, and I don't even know where these people are relative to that. So there's so many questions I'm having about how this is working out. Again, I'm not going to go through all my discussion on that. That if you were to take the very facts that John Bolenbaugh has found, there's only certain facts that he states. Not everything he shows is actually applicable, but the ones that he shows, when properly applied, let's say evidence of value costs in harm, which cannot be paid for, as applied in the very beginning of the project as mitigation in construction and maintenance. They may have to redesign a pipe, folks. I told you this up front. Find the better pipe design. Find the ones that don't work. Eliminate those from the alternatives of possibility. If you're not in that process, you have that it's offered to you, you really have no place of complaint. It's a false claim to say that Standing Rock, by the evidence constructed by the clerk of the court called a judge in the case of the injunction, from what I can see by that record, which nobody argued was wrong, to my knowledge, everything was afforded to the Indians that they could have done what I'm saying should have been done, to put on the table the evidence they needed to actually reasonably address this problem, if they really wanted to be water protectors. See, that's the difference I'm looking at. It's kind of why I said I wash my hands of it. I'm not going to get into this much more, but I did see this. I am compelled by the answer I see that no one wants to use, that I know in the process we use would be an answer when properly applied. As I said, the value after the environmental harm, the real environmental harm, not the pseudo-earth environmental harm, the real environmental harm that can't be fixed, the what they call the irreparable harm that money can't buy, in the fact of this problem that he documents fairly well. The repercussions to people, what they'll call the human element, is an impact under NEPA that can be discussed now as evidence, folks, not your opinions. Now, okay, so I'm offering that instead of the same criticism that I've been offering to tell you that I see, the way I look at this, I see something that's not being done that should have been done, that would go a long way to answering this problem that's out there in a realistic way, and not based on the hype and the stalking horses and the very real emotional attachment to the condition that's been imposed on people. But you notice over this response that I'm telling you is a solution that's underneath the legal, even the legal offering that is recognized, and the thing that even the government itself, when it came out to stop the construction, used. You didn't even recognize that, I don't think. They used the very same thing I'm telling you that you can use. They used it to shut it all down, even though that was a fraud and they have another agenda. This is the dynamic, and if you missed it, you missed it. Now a woman has had her arm blown up. And all kinds of manner of stuff. Am I agreeing that the police should have done that? Absolutely not. But if I told you before, not only are you in a war zone in the United States, battlefield America, when you go to riots and they consider it rioting to not sit in peace beating on your drum, because that's what they determine, because they have the determination on what's peaceful. When you start addressing them, they have every right to stop the riot. And they determine what that is. And people aren't paying attention. We see that all the time with the cops. I don't know why this is being missed here. Why is it all so much bigger with these psychopath cops do the same thing to Indians, except that I can see they're not that peaceful as Indians at some point. There was other ways to get at this. Getting over to the answer I have. I think it's an answer. John Bolenbaugh, I don't underwrite everything that he's showing you or his reasons. I don't never talk to him, don't know. Looking at some evidence I see right on videotape, acknowledging he hasn't proven the $1 billion claim. If that claim of value after the fact of the damage can be shown, it can be added up front to the fact of what the historic damages is that they need to cover, that they're going to have to cost, it's going to cost them anyway. And if they do it right, more likely they're not going to have it, and we won't then have the irreparable harm to the environment that you see he produces pretty clearly. And I'm trying to stay as neutral on all of this as I can within the constraint of what we have to work with. So it's enough time, I guess, there. I'm just thinking on and on and on. I could go on and on. Again, I don't see anybody doing the right research. All the information I hear that's coming out of it's not really accurate. Folks, you're going to have to move out of there on December 15th by the permit. That proved that you were not on reservation land. It proved that you were subject to the fact of that, and you can rail against it, but it's not going to actually do much. My thought is, I'm looking at an army of people that if they did it better, they could be it's the very thing I tell you folks. You go into your local community, in your local towns and councils, go inside the building. Have a thing in your hand that's proof. Don't make second-hand. You want to make protect the Second Amendment or ordinance. Stop that. You got to learn what the whole process is. Just don't go in there thinking you know about it. You really got to learn your subject matter. Go into the seats of decision and have a conversation with them. The Indians can go into Washington. That's where their treaties. If they want to go by the treaty, that's where they go. Otherwise, it's to the agencies. That's still in Washington. You take that army and peacefully go in with your paperwork and proof and you write letters and you go to the meetings that you're supposed to. And this thing is a big tentacled octopus, I know, but that's where we've let it go. And we let it go that way because everyone goes out onto the field and gets water cannon and get their arm blowed off and get shot at and whatever the heck else is all going on. Why am I saying that's better? Folks, I've just said it before, and I say it every broadcast I get a chance. As we have been applying this process, I told you before, if we were given as Jefferson Mining District, even one of the meetings offered to the Indians would be a great thing. They can't even give us the one meeting, folks. They already know by the paperwork we file they can't give us the one meeting if they want to push the agenda. If they can't give us the meeting, folks, they don't. The bottom line is we got it's in a way, it's the stork with the frog in its mouth while the frog is grabbing and gripping the throat of the stork. You can't swallow him if the frog keeps holding on to his throat. So now they stand there. Nothing really goes on. So the point is, the administrative process allows you to stalemate the condition so they can't actually destroy you. Now, it may not be comfortable what you're doing, but you're not going to be eaten. You're not going to be destroyed. And right now, that's just a tool that we have. We're trying to work better. As we understand better, we're going to do better. As we have more people understand better, we're going to do better. If I can get the people that believe they have a cause in North Dakota to do it more properly, I think, again, we're not at odds. Somehow I just look at it. If you can't see that it's not working well, you have a problem, actually. And yet I see John Bolenbaugh, and I don't know, again, he's sounds like he's good at heart. Sounds like he's coming from a true place. I'll just accept that. But I see in his videos and his statements evidence that is very powerful in the context of NEPA or whatever the consultation value was. And you understand now, all this time I've been talking, I haven't brought up treaty rights, protecting water. I haven't brought up, except to explain it to you, that that's what you think you're doing, that if you do it right, you will be doing. I haven't brought in any of the things that are really irrelevant, at least by the list of things, that everyone I hear talking about we have to do. See, you get focused on the light beam, the laser beam that someone is flicking around the wall, and as the kitty, you're going to go all over the wall, down the tree, and over the carpet, and round on the couch, and through the chairs. That's what you're doing. You don't realize the one with the laser beam, first of all, using a toy to toy with you, because you're not addressing that one. Like maybe turning around and going after the leg of the one that's holding the flash, the laser, and tell them to knock that off. All right, maybe a bad analogy. Some would say this is another catastrophe that we just heard. I don't know if you all understood. President Raul Castro announced the death of his brother Fidel Castro on state TV. I thought it was a bit historic. All my life I've heard about this guy. I know there's a lot of people that are against him. I don't know. I've never been around. They've had a small island to deal with a lot of people. It was just another government in my mind. But I wanted to just pass that on. It's like anything historic. We have a guy that's been in the world for all my life who is now gone, and we'll see if the people of Cuba can do better for themselves. In some regards, they've had some pretty good things they've done, like any government. And then there's a lot of people that say, again, these people are murderers, right? They're government. So let's not get too wild. I just wanted to make the announcement. But upon that, I noticed just as this thing rolls out, Trump issues a statement immediately from Twitter, and this is going to be, I think, something that for us, maybe an interesting thing to watch. I don't follow Trump on Twitter. In fact, the more I think about Twitter, I'm just wondering, what really good is it, actually? If you see I don't have that many, I can't follow that many people, I can't keep up with it, and there's not many following me, so few people, the few that I have will maybe retweet. What is that? We're just passing around concepts. It really doesn't get anything done, and for my sake, it doesn't really further what I need as I see we need to do. So Trump uses Twitter, and I understand he might actually do more of this. He issues a statement, so we have to. I like the immediacy of this is interesting, because what he does is he comes out with a more formal statement after, but he leads with his Twitter response to Fidel Castro's death is, "Fidel Castro is dead!" ! So apparently Trump was a little bit more tied into the problem of Cuba somehow than we might see. So understand there's all these things playing under the skin of all of this stuff as we move in to the brave new world. I won't read any of that. You can see it. I got, again, the links. And just to be frank, I see the people, not many people coming to the Blogcaster, and I literally spend over 2 hours. In fact, I'm trying to keep up with making the time free for Gariel and Gigi's program 2 hours after mine, so tune in to their broadcast. But there's so much time I put in. I'm sometimes a half an hour late. Depends on all the links I have to put in to show that really not many people show up and watch and look at that. So I can tell by the clickbait such that that Blogcaster might be. I don't know, with just links for information. What people are avoiding and all that, I don't know, other than you maybe don't want to understand how to read more in context what I'm talking to you in just a few minutes, which actually ends up being over an hour now. I haven't got through. I thought I was going to finish today, folks, and again, just so much to talk about that not many people are listening to. It's kind of, again, I just wonder about us. I know what I'm doing. I know we're working on some pretty cool things at work. It's not a question to me. Why people make it a question must be, again, it's all in the receiver as far as I can do. I can transmit it, but if no one's got the radio tuned, what more can I do? What more can I do? I'm subject to your excuse. And I can feel myself getting back over. See, I just don't know. I put a ton of time, and I don't have the emails coming in, even lost, looking for a place to go. I get a few emails, then I get a few people that say they're going to do something and no follow-up. I don't know. And I'm feeling like I said last week, I'm the Leon Russell of broadcasting. I'm the anti-E.F. Hutton of information dissemination. I'm kind of feeling like the Rodney Dangerfield of content origination, vocal ventilation. because I get no respect. Now, I know that's earned. I know respect is earned, so maybe I haven't done that. But I don't know that that's the factor either. But let's forget about it. It doesn't matter. The parallel universe is going to take you over anyway. It doesn't matter. You're behind the woodshed, aren't you? That's where we figure this out. I can't claim to be Johnny Appleseed. Nevertheless, I'm spreading the seeds of applicable truth to malcontents. Another word you need to go look up. Donald Trump will draw U.S. from a TPP on day one, as he gives major policy address on what he will do in the first 100 days as president. Folks, I just wanted to point out something here. I'm going to focus a little bit on this, but not much on the TPP, but Donald Trump and this election. On day one, his removal of TPP, they've already claimed it's a done deal. On day one, the removal of TPP, it was an idea. It's not going to affect jobs in the first instance at all. Why? I'm trying to get access to the administration, and we haven't had success yet. I want more than tenuous access, because I want to assert that on day two, he can literally get jobs in the field on day two by what we have to offer, which is strictly following the government following the law and enforcing it, not just sitting back and thinking that the employees of the culture of non-use are going to make it so. I wanted to point out, though, his claim here that TPP will be his first act is irrelevant to the fact of actually what he claims is, in the same article, is that he wants administration to create jobs. Because TPP is nothing. It's just an idea that is threatened to be something. So he's working on nothing. It will end up being not Obama trade, it'll be Trump trade when they get this thing done. Even though I tell you I want access to the administration because I want, despite his rhetoric, I want to see real jobs happening. And not for the sake of the job. We have land law that we're supporting here that provides for the place for jobs, so-called. Because what I talk about is grantees. We don't have a job. We make a livelihood. And it's from our work. By definition, we're workers. By definition, we are only supported by what we do. And it's not welfare that we can receive. And so it starts to set up a whole other dynamic. And from what raw material producers do, secondary, tertiary work and economy develops. Entrepreneurial things happen in support of the raw materials. That, again, I'm asking anybody with the 6 degrees of separation from Trump to me to you, it'll be 5 degrees on your end. You're a little closer than I am. I want access, folks. And we're looking. We're working on other ways. It just takes a little bit longer time, but it's not coming quick enough for me as I hear these guys making decisions. And this is despite the ugly cabinet he's putting together, the ugliness that he's putting together. There's a glimmer of hope for a certain thing to happen, all within the law. And it's to overcome things like this next door. U.S. blocks new mining outside of Yellowstone Park. U.S. official on Monday blocked new mining claims outside of Yellowstone National Park as the Obama administration races in its last days to keep industry out of natural and environmentally sensitive areas. I guess I just want to prep that. This woman, Jules, is, I suppose she's a woman. This is it, because I don't know gender anymore. I'm just nuts. At any rate. Get lost in some of this anyway. So this is the dynamic that we've been living under for more than actually 8 years under Obama. This is part of that system that puts natural and environmental conditions before the impacts of people as the law provides. That's NEPA. Talked a little bit about it in the UCY chat when Ron Stevens was talking. That this is what we can change. This is the very part of what we can be after. When he replaces this woman, zit, whatever. If I say woman, I'll insult her, right? But she's a gender-neutral, someone I can't identify, so she's an it, but Z is always added in front to make it PC. So, as I said in my zit broadcast, that's what we're dealing with here. Just so we can be PC, so I can communicate stuff? What? Anyway, so back over to the mining claims that are happening there. They withdraw them. They even affect private property to show you how big a trespasser the federal government has become. That if we can get an insight, or an inroad into this administration, we can correct all of this. And it doesn't mean, like some people will say, that it goes lawless or, oh, the corporations win. No, it goes back into the what made America what it is and great to have, so that you come till today to have what you all have, that you actually let go. Think about that, what I just said, with respect to what I say and have said for years. You let it all slip through your fingers, and what we're trying to do is bring back this objective basis of land disposal law, which is acknowledging that there's a property right that's external and exclusive to every one of us, even against the government itself. Shows us and breaks the fact of the sovereignness that we are pounded with that the government has. As soon as you start getting this, and it's why I focus on some of these things, you'll understand how to get at it. You really will start to see it. But those of you that are clouded, you'll have other ideas. I don't know what to say about it. I can only keep asking you to really read the black and white, understand as quickly as I'm going through this stuff. The tip of the iceberg I'm speaking about here is the thing it'll sink the ship of state that has been allowed to fester with these other people in government that are working in cultures counter to production. In fact, I keep reading. I don't want to read. You can read you can see it here yourself. They are closing off the lands, and to people that provide things to society. If that isn't a treason on its face, I don't know what to say. If you agree that you have things in your life today that you value, then you have to take stock in where those things originate and who does that. Or decide you can do without and then stop. And I see a lot of fence walkers here. More than water protectors, I see fence walkers. But more than that, I see dead people. Dead people in persons. I see the undead. And that's what we all are when we don't understand these statuses that have come up and allowed for grants and lands and private conveyances to be overwhelmed by a parallel construction. At the same time, all these elections and stuff came through, I want you to be aware of internationally, U.S. House seeks a Syria war escalation. Some of this story was a little bit sensational. They said that they were, one of the conversations was that they were actually declaring a war. When I look closely, and if this is the truth, that they are going to, this bill that passed assesses for a no-fly zone in Syria. They're assessing the imposition of a no-fly zone is not the declaration of war, but the impact will be requiring the declaration of war, as I've reported before, as the general had stated to Congress. That right under our nose, if you think nothing's going on in this government, in this lame duck sessions going on, they are making laws still, and the Democrats are in on it. You think that the full Republican government's going to be better? Hold on, folks. I don't know. I'm not so sure, but I mean, if you think that because Republicans got in, that you took over America, boy, you missed it. But at any rate, so this is a serious thing that's going on right now. They're calling for an assessment of the imposition of no-fly zone by law. And so I'm, as I told, I think I got this through Shali. He was through Twitter, through somebody else, and I apologize for not knowing the lineage. But as I quickly looked at this, I told him, I hope this is just that they restrict it to merely assessing, because that gives us a little bit more time. But understand that there's a democratically controlled or constrained House which still went to looking at making war with Syria underneath all of the fraud since 9/11 and the Bush era as well. So I'm not the spokesman for any of this. It's a big revulsion to me, but Again, there's a reality of war. War is ugly, and I don't know what more to do in the battlefield but to deal with that part. And there's some people that can't, apparently. There's some people are already in shock enough to be dysfunctional. In one regard, that's real, but it's also going to be an excuse. You got to get hit, get knocked down, and you got to stand back up. Then you got to go back into battle with your wounds. You have to be learned by those. What we try to do is that battle is partly won by you being the porcupine in war. If you remember what I've been talking about all these years about how that works, it's exactly what I'm talking about. And you make sure that they don't mess with the porcupine. And you're at peace with what you do as a porcupine. So understand what I'm saying here is trying to make the peaceful path through a war zone. And not be driven by a lot of people who are put up on pedestals, which brought me to this story, which I didn't really know what was going on, but it didn't really occur to me. What's interesting that I miss as well, in the stream of consciousness going on, and we call Twitter or whatever that is, a little story popped up which caught my attention, not by this story, but what came right after it, which called my attention to this condition. We were talking, now this is the meme here, the theory of fake news, and someone attacked blacklisted news. Doug Owens was the owner of Oracle, where I used to come from, and what came through, someone's attacked blacklisted news as a fake news site, and he's Doug's site, blacklisted news, is I think a two parts, and I'm not talking to Doug about this, but just an observation. I actually haven't talked to Doug much since we went from Oracle, but this morning this came up that blacklisted news has been considered, I guess, by some other website as a fake news site. But he's a news aggregator, so-called aggregator. He also has a second side, a part of it that I differentiate, where he actually has people who post on his site original content. So original opinion can't be fake news, it's just an opinion. The news aggregation is simply what everybody does in aggregating all this so-called news. That he was called out for being a fake, and I looked at that and said, but he's called blacklisted news. And I finally realized that was a kind of an interesting name. He can literally sit on both sides of that, and then they'd have to identify what. It's kind of like me saying I'm beyond media. How can I be fake news if I'm beyond media? Somebody didn't check the facts. So there's self-evident proofs in these things. And I'm trying to get you to see how this works, and look ahead when you do things. You act with that future potential in mind. I don't know if Doug did that, but to me, they were these people that are accusing him of fake news site being named blacklisted news are trying to untie their own Gordian knot. And I said that on Twitter. But here's another problem that we're having about so-called fakeness, and I've always had problem with all these things, these people that talk to us, where their origins are. And so what didn't come to me, except for the picture I noticed, what didn't come to my mind presently about the problem came to me after a subsequent Twitter. Donald Trump is the first one. Donald Trump supporters Milo Yiannopoulos, barred from speaking at former school after government intervened. Now, I don't know too much about Milo. He's apparently gay. And he's outspoken, and I think I've heard him speak. He's got an intelligence, certainly, to him. He certainly has a presence. He certainly is antagonistic in all those metro ways as well. Well, it says right here, and this was the problem. Milo, a 32-year-old British journalist who has become the face of America's alt-right, in quotes, alt-right. We don't know what that is, alt-right movement. He's a British journalist who has become the American face of alt-right movement. A movement was due to speak at Simon Langton Grammar School for Boys in Canterbury. However, James Soderholm, these names are so close, at any rate. Soderholm, the school's director of humanities, disclosed that the event had been canceled after the Department of Education raised concerns for security and potential reputational issues. Now, I'm not going to get into the PC of this at all. I want to focus on who's identified what alt-right is. What is that actually? That a British journalist, media, has become an American face. First of all, that's really my whole thing. How did that happen just on an international level? That these Brits become our spokesmen for movements. What are the movements? Who are these people? However intelligent they sound, however accurate it might be, why are they on the pedestal? Why is this guy being carried in to a school as if he's a king on some Egyptian platform on a throne, being carried by people with Trump hats on is really beyond me. But let's focus on the British journalist being the face of Americanism stuff. And then I see this from Paul Joseph Watson. Jill Stein is bringing disgrace to what was a noble and intelligent run, was his statement referring to the title of another article that makes that statement. And I'm looking at noble and intelligent. But this was his statement. That's okay. I don't have a problem with Paul Joseph Watson. Until I saw, not really him, and I'm not attributing anything to his statement, until I saw Stefan Molyneux retweet that statement from Paul Joseph Watson, and he says, Stefan Molyneux says, a disgrace, talking of Jill Stein, a disgraceful leftist, get out, is what Stefan Molyneux said. And I looked at the get out. Now, politically, if I go political side, Jill Stein's just another tool, right? And she has other attachments, which I'm not going to get into because it seems to be offensive. Some people really rally around this question, but other people find offense to it, and I don't tend to need to talk about it, that she represents as well. But Stefan Molyneux says, a disgraceful leftist, get out. And then I looked at that get out, and I looked at his picture, little drawing, and I said, wait a minute, you're a Canuckistinian. Whoever Jill Stein is and what she does, she's in a country that you're not from. Who are you to say she has to get out? Stefan Molyneux. That got me thinking when I said Canuckistinian in my mind, who is Paul Joseph Watson? Where's he from? Well, let's go look. Well, Stefan Molyneux has a little wiki page, says he's an Irish-born Canadian, came from Ireland and moved into Canada. Canuckistan. He's Canadian. I could only find, quickly looking, I don't want to waste a whole lot of time, Facebook page, I had to go there. Facebook page for Paul Joseph Watson says he's from London, United Kingdom, Sheffield. In America, where have we gone to let Milo, who's got, I understand now, a Greek and a British passport, or citizenship, not American, British journalist, Canuckistinian historian in Molyneux, and someone who is deemed to be some editor from Sheffield, England for AJ's site. Who are they to be the spokesman to determine things American and whom should get out? Who's the authority to tell them to get out? Who is the disgrace, the disrespect in themselves to tell someone else to get out of their own country? And they're all British subjects. Became an interesting problem in the fact of isolating it in my mind that I had never really noticed before who these people are. As I've told you, this Assange thing, the snow job, Snowden, they all look like psyops at some level, though I really can't put my hand on it. To me, I've had a problem with all these guys. Anybody that comes up to sound too intelligent in my mind, and it's not about the intelligence, it's that they are on the point. It's like what Trump did to you all. Played you all like a fiddle. Remember that Charlie Daniels song? Played you like a fiddle, just like that. That's what these things are doing. Why do we have Brits? And I have again, it's not about them being Brits, it's about they're not local to the function of the establishment of the American government or its people. They're opinions from outside looking in. Even James Corbett had the decency to say, James Pilato, about the election, you live there, you tell me. James Corbett being a Canuckistinian in Japan. He at least had the decency to hand it over to James Pilato to make a comment of the election. That these guys are actually telling Americans, I assume Jill Stein's an American, whether or not she's a dual citizen, I don't know, but she's at least an American to run for office of the highest law of the land, although that's a question because of the unqualified one. And we found out we can't get at that, can we? But notwithstanding, I assume, based on the status of this candidate, Jill Stein was an American. Who is Stefan Molyneux to have an opinion? Who is Paul Joseph Watson? I don't even know the name. See, it's not even part of me. I had to go look up to remind myself who I'm actually talking about. These people are just nothing actually to me, but they make themselves known to you. And they have thousands and millions of people that follow them, and I want to know why. Why do you all put up with it? I'm not saying we're perfect. I'm certain I'm not saying we're perfect in America or we're better anymore or any of that. You know that. But who are these people we allow to interject themselves? This is no different the invasion that I talk about we fight all the time in a different way. No matter how truthful their statements are, no matter how much the sentiment rings with you from inside, they actually don't have a place to be a prominent face, voice, or opinion for this country. That we continue to allow it. That they don't find the problem on their side of the border to expose it and then tell you what they can perceive as a solution on their side of the border is the problem I see. They came over to be just like them coming to you, and you have the same view that she has and telling you, you American subject, get out of your own country. And I don't know why people don't perceive that. I don't know, even as I think about it now, it did catch my mind. It is something important. But in the scheme of things, it's really unimportant. But it is a tool against your mind. It's a tool of influence against other perceptions. And the more I look at it, listen, I don't listen to Stefan Molyneux. I've listened to him a couple times. I turned him off. I don't really watch. I don't watch at all, these guys. I have nothing to... Milo, I've seen by accident in news clips or whatever, I've seen him. That's the only reason why I know these people. In sound bites, they sound pretty smart. But telling the truth in sound bites does not mean it's not everything. Since when have Americans allowed them to be the face that the face has a hat called Trump, and the face of a British journalist is the one writing as the Egyptian queen into the school system? It's something I think you need to take at least at least facial stock of, if not symbolic stock of where we are as a society. I told you a long time ago the Constitution shows linkages back. We were never separate from England. We were never separate from the Netherlands. I don't know if you know this. I think it was just proven. We were just talking about it again. The Netherlands is really not part of the EU. There's a reason for it. Brexit had to happen for about the same reason. If you don't take stock in this thing and see this hierarchy, you don't understand really how to play this out. You don't understand that war. So in this fake news, you can be told the truth inside it, but what's the message? Who's delivering it, and why that you're not delivering that message is another point. Through going on this so-called identifying, now we're in the world of faked reality, and we're up. Alt-right is picking it up like this British imposition, like the invasion is on again, folks. There was never a revolution that actually amounted to much. They've always been in our pockets now. They're in our minds. They're all over the place. They're our face now. And why? Because we, as the United States, is the melting pot. We have no actual identity. That's why they can foist all these pseudo-identities on, where abuse becomes an identity. And remember what I said, what I believe, and no one has sent me any proof otherwise in the email, that I believe that this homosexual response is this homosexual identity is a response to abuse. That putting a queen, literally on the carrying of Trump, with Trump hats carrying the queen into a classroom, is indicative of the plan. That it exalts abuse, and it shuts up principle and reason, and more importantly, laws. The principle and reason are the foundation of the law. The law is what we all have to respond to. Why I keep talking to you about the black and white. it's going to be one of the protectors for us. It's not, the law doesn't necessarily apply to you, but it is a standard by which those occupying you can be held to account. At least, let's say in DAPL or any of these things through coordination or what the Indians call consultation, those are the mechanisms by which you check the excesses and abuses. You just have to speak in a certain way. I didn't say I agree with it, but that's the fact. And if you come and disrespect yourself by not listening to the truth of what I'm telling you, you will walk back out and not be empowered by this knowledge. You will not know that it works, that it has to work, that it works, and that you have to work it that way. I said the proper approach to the costs after the fact of a pipeline was to present the historic record of their existence, their factual historic existence as a reliance of future harm, and place that value on the mitigation in the construction and maintenance of the pipeline would be how you properly speak to that point. So I give you the answer there, that one. That's more properly speaking to the point. It gives you have the evidence, so there's nothing they can deny. They're going to have to come right in your face and say when you do that, they're going to have to say, well, we're not going to protect you at that level. So sad to be you. Now that is a whole lot better case to argue than what I see going on. That the government doesn't care about people enough to do mitigation measures ahead of time that they're going to spend anyway. Now, getting back to the fake news and all this other stuff, it was interesting. I noticed this little thing come through. We tracked down a fake news creator in the suburbs. Here's what we learned out of NPR. Interesting little story. Turns out that there's been people who are Democrats who have created websites they were created, this is not no CIA thing now, at least necessarily, but I mean, there was no identification that it was, so I'll leave it short of that. People were sharp enough to figure out they could induce the so-called alt-right to pick up and just, disseminate fake news. Literally made up so-called news, made up stories, and pass them as news. And this is where this is coming. You see, you're hearing the setup here in this story for what they were going to attack in the future, and that's why they've labeled it alt-right. And when I watched this information thing coming, that's why I early on went to Beyond Media. I don't even want to be in this. I want you to understand this is beyond news. This is notice. This is the stuff, how they're coming at you, and how we can deal with it. The only reason why I'm tangible to news is just because it's notice that gives us the heads up and future view. That people have started websites that were the producers and promoters of fake news was found, by chance. They did their forensics on the internet to find out who was doing this, and he didn't want to answer the front door when they first called, but certainly he called them back, and now they had a discussion and an interview, which explains a whole lot in this story you need to read. We tracked down a fake news creator in the suburbs. Here's what we learned. That there was Democratic bent people, political party people, bent on trying to show that the alt-right would accept any kind of news without check. They make a specific statement that says that the so-called liberal websites wouldn't have anything to do with these stories. What I want you to know is that you can't tell what is news and what's not. As I've been telling you, I've been really questioning myself, being able to even talk about it. I got to be very careful when I talk and bring so-called news that's being proliferated, disseminated by the websites that I would just find them through Twitter. I've been very cautious to tell you, be careful on really thinking. I go by the headline, partly why I try to limit to the headline. Because in the headline, it gives us a clue of the notice. But I don't have to get tangled up with the truth of it if the truth of the headline is a fact of the tool against you, the weapon against you. That I've said just recently, I don't know where some of these websites are getting these stories, but let's go with this part of it. that I can't possibly know without researching more where these stories originate either. That we are shown here now, there's sites out there, and so now if somebody just off the cuff can come up with it, we know the government can, okay? So we really can't know, and this is why I say we really don't know a lot. Unless you went out and reported it yourself and got all the facts and figured all the facts were all the facts to get, you can't know. I'm pausing here. You getting that? We really were just yakking a lot of nonsense. And so I try to stick to principles of application. I actually don't know where I started to understand to do that, long before I got on broadcasting. I think it was because we needed to do to address the false news of the false lawyer, the false law, the false legislator. They do the same thing. And so here, NPR wants to give you the notice of how they track down to explain to you that there's a lot of people that in the alt-right that'll just so-called, I don't even know what this alt-right is really. They move the information around, and it's totally made up. And it doesn't even have to, as I've said, I've been now noticing the websites that I would take quite a bit of information from, and finding out through my own analysis, especially through DAPL, the North Dakota Indian thing, completely fabricated, sensationalized topics, which, as I say, sensationalized gets me over to AJ's stuff. Some truth with a whole lot of what? Marketing. And so until we really work out the distinction between what we really use this information about and form our opinions on, and whether or not, and then use it, see if I'm using it as notice of what they're doing. Like I take these three issues with the British people interfering actually with our mindsets in America, taking the lead literally, just taking it from us. Why aren't we our own face? Why aren't we our own message? Why aren't we stating the truths the way we need to have them stated? They've taken that away from the American. Part of that's because the American's a melting pot. Not one of you can be the voice in some regard. They don't care. They know people work like the animal herd mentality that they've been fostering. What I'm here to say is that you have to understand the message that's being told to you, to observe what is the reality. In other words, when it's British Canuckistinians, the British subjects giving you your opinion, you should be highly concerned about that. Because until you also understand that there's a way the law in the United States works that's distinct from everywhere in the world, not as you have experienced in the last 30, 40 years, but the way it ought to have been done and says it's supposed to be done, you are susceptible to their suggestion. No different like any other hypnotist. And doesn't Molyneux kind of pass himself off as some kind of psychiatric case? He's a psychiatrist type. I'm telling you, I can't listen to his stuff more than a few minutes. I've tried. What does people find so so important about this guy? So right about this guy? I can't do it. But then again, I'm learning I can't do a whole lot anymore. I'm really focusing down to certain things. I really can't do some of the things that people find are entertaining. I guess that makes me kind of boring or whatever. I don't know what that means to some people. Rather not get in a conversation, might have to actually answer something that I'm questioning about. Oh man, you better be careful. You better come up with the right answer. You'll find it out. And that's kind of cool, but that's not what's helping us. So we can be entertained, but I'm telling you, it's going to influence your thoughts, and you'll become complacent, or you'll hand over your power to them, or you will just let it go because you feel powerless against it. And if you don't understand that and do it right when you come out, you come out of your closet, your property closet, the things of substance, that they shoved you into that closet and you didn't know it. If you don't do it right, they get you for you thinking of how you were supposed to respond, and you respond in the wrong way, which I'm trying to tell you to stop doing. You got to think about this. And this is kind of reflected in this next report. A hacker who helped expose Ohio rape case pleads guilty, faces more prison time than rapists. And so in my mind, I'm going, well, how can a hacker? I mean, I know the federal computer hacking crimes are pretty severe, But this is an Ohio case, so that's a state thing. How can a hacker get more time? Well, when you read the story, the title is sensational. It's coming from RT as well. But this is nothing less than what I see on a lot of these so-called alternative media, not about alt-right, but alternative media sites. They'd want to pump this up. When in actuality, when you look at what happened, I'm saying, folks, don't do this. If you're going to hack and you're going to do that and get caught, don't do what this guy did, even though your cause may be good. And then I have a problem about hacking and someone's this and that and the other, and I don't know. I've got now a whole dilemma at some point. That this guy, Derek Lost Udder, 29, known online as KY Anonymous, because he's from Kentucky. He pled guilty in a federal court in Kentucky, so I was incorrect. It wasn't a state court. It was under Ohio. See how they did that? They put in the title, it's Ohio, and it's actually federal. That's federal district, not federal state. And so here's another thing I want to point out that I even looked past, even though I read this before. It didn't occur to me to watch out about that. So pleaded guilty in a federal court in Kentucky to 1 count of conspiracy and 1 count of making false statements to law enforcement agents for his hack of the Steubenville, Ohio high school football fan website Roll Red Roll in December of 2012. Now, go back to the title. The hacker who helped expose Ohio rape case pleads guilty, faces more prison time than rapists. He was not charged as a hacker, was he? He didn't plead the fifth under question, though. And so, this is a subject lesson. However these facts roll out, he got charged, given these are the facts, he got charged with things other than hacking. You have to learn how not to do that. I'm saying possibly, more than likely, the Fifth Amendment would have protected you. And then you say, I plead the Fifth. I will not say anything to incriminate me, nor can I be compelled to do so. And you shut up. And then they'll say, but you're not under charge. I say, but I might be under charge because you're questioning me. So if you're not under charge, you can't actually use the Fifth. You have to actually admit you could be subject by the things you know that you don't know they're looking for. You don't say all that. You just say that you are here talking to me, and it might be that I am, so I'm going to defend myself with the Fifth. And I shut up. And then you shut up. This was not about a hacker, and this was not about the rape case. This is about someone who lied about that situation, that I am giving you notice, that this notice is to me. Learn how to act and respond better in the face of the tyranny. Going on, which is a lot less than I am going to cover than I thought, because I thought these were quick stories, as they always seem to be in my mind. My mind flashes all the answers and I'm done. And I forget that this is a broadcast time is an interesting reality. Ninth Circuit, we talked about this before. I want to show you that they're going to confirm this along here now. Ninth Circuit says medical marijuana card holders have no Second Amendment rights. Okay, so I'm not going to go through a lot of it. I mean, just there's lots of things here. Marijuana card holders are permitted. Remember, a permit is a license to do a crime, but for the permit. So you legalizers of cannabis, you messed up, just as I told you, and now it's extended over. I won't go back into that. I talked to that past broadcasts. But the Ninth Circuit, these are the attorneys that agree with the UN that in the plaza has a pistol with a knot tied in that pistol, which they falsely characterize in law as a firearm. All right, you have to understand that. What they're dealing with is a commercial firearm, not your arm. And so when we get these people figured out, that the Ninth Circuit has now upheld that decision that says if you have a medical marijuana card, you can, because you're some potential lunatic under the influence of a federally non-allowable drug, you can have your rights, your constitutional rights withheld. So again, I mean, I've talked about all this, how the heck that can happen. They're doing it. Crickets. Okay, so don't do that. Figure out a way around. It's time to lift the legalization and make use a non-crime. Get rid of the criminal aspect for giving the state, the people, the authority to permit you and place you into a status that is in a status that does not deserve of the Second Amendment. you see how this works. I hope you put this together. Appeals court says it's perfectly fine for the DOJ to steal Kim.com's money before trial. This is the battlefield that you're in. That they have you in commerce. They steal you. They seize your money. That's all Admiralty. No one understands this. This is all kind of doing the commerce Admiralty thing. And they come in and they take your stuff, and the court says, yeah, we get to do that. See, it makes no sense if you think about due process as money is property and it's yours and they can't take it, but you're in a fiat system that uses their system of bank for protection or to hold it, and then it's all in commerce no matter what you do, like your internet, and you think it's your property. And then you go to do something that's supposed to be unlawful in the ocean of commerce. And the court said that the offended state under Admiralty can just, it's a prize. We'll just take it. Now you're obligated to tell us why where the license you had to be the merchant on the seas, and you had grant of license as a neutral by us. Did I just say too much, folks? That's exactly how you look at this if you're not paying attention. It doesn't matter what jurisdiction. I told you there's a thread of application through all jurisdictions they've made in supposed law, equity, non-law, legal, lawful, whatever. Admiralty, equity, common. And in Admiralty they speak like this. It's merchantability, it's commerce, it's letters patent. And if you're not sitting in a neutral's capacity and can put against the confiscating state the lack of authority to confiscate because they have agreed prior to your right to do so, then you will lose unless you say that. I can't remember how I started that sentence, but at any rate, unless you know to do that and you can prove it, you're considered a criminal. That they can send their cruiser out and seize and bring into port as prize. So for all you parators of Admiralty law, there's a way to discuss it even underneath that. That this is what they're doing. This is actually a copyright case from Kin.com being in New Zealand. United States prosecutor. It's pretty a pathetic case generally. They're trying to break new ground. They're trying to make it so that this is the DOJ, the federal DOJ is the hit squad against to protect the DMAC or DMCA copyright organization. And they're going after Kim.com, and the court says that we can steal all your money and leave you defenseless so you can't protect yourself. The only place I know that that's possible is in Admiralty and underneath that condition. A word to the wise. How they're taking you out. Why it's so important for you to understand that you have, when you get yourself on the land, not of man on the land, but on the land of right, of the disposal, as an obligation and duty that's exclusive to you, that's protected by that which may come to take from you as a prize. You are becoming you're the neutral with right as granted by that party or its agent, and they can't take you unless they want to dishonor themselves. Terrorists fighting license plate readers, just mobile revenue generators cruising poor neighborhoods, which was another report long back. We know that what automatic license plate readers are good for, collecting massive amounts of billions of records of plate locations, data housed by private companies and accessed by law enforcement for indefinite periods of time, indefinite detention. You hear all those similar words. What we don't know is how effective ALPRs are at fighting investigating crime. So this was an investigation. Understand, terrorists fighting license plate readers. Remember, you're in commerce when you have that license plate. Terrorism is under international law. Look how fast they got you out of your own place. And so until you start understanding this, and we have some concerted effort to expose the distinction between a commercial privilege and the right to use the road through the road grants, we're going to see these problems. Remember, when you have the license plate, they can get you. Well, if you don't have the license plate, it says in the law they're not supposed to even pay attention to you. But see, that's not the way the occupier works, because it makes them no money. If they can't find a status for you, like invent the word parent, then they can't put you into their state. In other words, remember my friend went into the court where I advised him you got to have the cop question your status, a question of whether or not he mischaracterized your status. He said, a friend asked him, the cop, are you on the stand, or am I a man? And he finally admitted that my friend was a man. The judge interfered and said right away, well, I can't accept that evidence. If I accepted that evidence, the state, could not prosecute anyone. He didn't say anybody, he said anyone. Very important statement to be heard. We've run with that since, I think, 2001 or 3, I can't remember when that was. This is the connection. They mischaracterize your status, and they take control of it. I'm not saying that when you straighten up your status, it changes because they're criminals. The point is, if you don't know that, you don't even begin to start setting up the kind of defenses in your local jurisdictions to say, wait a minute now, the county is supposed to protect against this if I'm not in commerce. And so you see the connection to terrorism is a form of commerce. That's illegal. Any license given or war made against it is a commerce. It ends up being in politics. Not the many-faced bloodsuckers, I mean the so-called civil kind. All this, and this all, man, it just, lots of thoughts go in my mind. This ties us back to, eventually I could go right from here back to so-called, not what people think anarchy is, but the real anarchy. Maybe, anyway, I think that almost for a lost cause from what I see, people aren't really reading. They're using out-of-context definitions out of the dictionary that are not applied anywhere, actually, and making mythical realities. And I can go right back through from this to that and show that. I won't do it. I'm running out of time. As I said that, you're all looking at the clock, aren't you? Shouldn't do that. California Assembly passes bill to curb policing for profit via asset forfeiture close federal loophole. This is asset forfeiture is, I don't know how the states have authority to stop this anyway, because that's an Admiralty unless your state's a federal state, a federal district. Why the Ohio case maybe said Ohio, and you think state, I thought state, when it actually was federal court. But your assembly can make a policing for profit limitation. This is another avenue to help. If those of you that feel this is a violation, you need to band together, even if it starts with one, learn about what they're doing. They've already started in California. Go look and see if it passed. Close the loophole. It's not really a loophole, but start figuring out how to make law. You can make the law by initiative or petitioning your legislature. If you don't have that, get them to make a law that closes these federal infiltrations to destroy your property rights. In these things, we're going to come to the point where we're going to have to make that distinction between what's a privilege and what you were granted as the people as a pre-existing claim of possession by the people, as I'm talking now in disposition law, and your highways. How do we go from a pre-existing claim of possession by the people themselves to being regulated over that use has been an interesting view when you finally see it. That's impossible in law and only imposed by an occupier who could care less about the law as long as they get you to forget it. Why I say what I know is really just we're memorializing. It's a memory concept. We're remembering what we should have never let go. So we have different methods to go at this. I'm not the determiner of what that is for any of y'all, but I wanted to pose that we can stop this nonsense where they're saying that they do license readers and they can tie that over to some debt you owe, and they can steal your money ahead of time on kim.com to keep you from defending yourself and your property. Well, there's a way to go to the legislature, to even the occupiers they are, and make the law that limits that, restrains that action. So thank you for tuning in today. Hope something I said will help you, those all 3 or 4 of you that are still tuned in. I do appreciate it. Hopefully, I'm just wanting y'all to just take action. I think we can pull this thing off pretty well. Grimner, thank you very much for reallibertymedia.com and the space for the broadcaster and the archives and all the back work you do to keep it all floating. And Bo Diddy and you over there at Freedom's Network, thank you for making a place that we could talk for those of us that are conducive to do that. I still see that as a powerful tool if we wanted to place a safe space to engage in properly applicable ways. And Jules at UCY, I appreciate all your work. And again, talking with Jules a few weeks ago, I think people behind the scenes working on programs in order to make automation of our files up to their website better. And the terrestrial broadcasters, thank you very much. I appreciate what you do to all the civil defense people, still understanding what a radio and a charged battery is. Take care, folks. I'll be here next week. Tech diffs and nature willing.